Have you ever noticed how you can get stuck in a pattern of doing something? For example, you find yourself saying the same things over and over in conversations. Stuff like, you know what I mean? Or or you say 60 times every time you're trying to tell someone a story. Or maybe you've noticed it in class. Every time you go to your third period chemistry class, you fall asleep. It's almost as if walking through the doors of that third period classroom signals your brain to just shut down. Or maybe the tone of your chemistry teacher's voice is basically your version of counting sheep. Sometimes you think you should record her lectures and play them on nights that you can't sleep. We all have behavioral habits and patterns, and chances are pretty good that we never think about them. It's just what we do. In this series, Stuck, we've been talking about some things in life we feel like we're trapped in. We've talked about being stuck in a relationship that isn't good for us and feeling stuck in a bad mood. Those are typically pretty obvious to us. But today, I want to talk about something a little less obvious that can get us just as stuck: our actions. The problem is, very rarely do we feel like we have habits or behaviors we're stuck in. Not many of us would be bold enough to admit, you know what? I feel like I'm trapped in these behavior patterns and I can't get out of them. Instead, we justify. We make excuses. We blame our circumstances. We don't notice the pattern. Instead, we notice the circumstances that pushed us toward the behavior. But think about it for a moment. There are behavior patterns you have that are directly impacting your life that you've never viewed as a habit. In fact, you've probably never thought about them at all. Maybe it's partying. When the weekend hits, it's just what you do. You go out with your friends, drink a few beers, and hang out. And you say to yourself, we're just having fun, nobody's getting hurt, it's not a big deal. But it's a behavioral pattern. You would never tell somebody, I just want you to know that I'm a partier. But if they were to look at the pattern of your life, they would see partying as something you do with total consistency. Now, are you stuck in it? I don't know. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't, but it is a consistent pattern. Or maybe it's lying. Maybe you constantly twist the truth just a little bit, leaving out some details, editing and changing the story enough to keep yourself out of trouble. Or you do it to make your life seem more interesting. You play up certain stories and add details that didn't really happen, so your story is better. Or maybe it's porn. Maybe you browse late at night or visit certain sites on a consistent basis. It's just what you do when you can't sleep and you're by yourself, right? You tell yourself it's not a big deal. When I'm older and I'm married, I'm not gonna do this anymore. I can stop anytime I want. But it's a behavior you're stuck in and you don't even realize it. Or maybe it's cheating. You tell yourself you have to do it to keep up with the pressures of your school academics. Besides, other people are doing the same thing, so it's not like you're the only one. And you only do it occasionally, so you're not a cheater. It's not that you don't feel bad about it, it's that you don't think about it at all. Or obsession. Maybe you're obsessed with the idea of dating, or you're obsessed with a certain guy or girl you want to be dating. If you look back, you've been like that for a long time. And you'd never admit, yeah, I'm obsessed with dating. But you don't feel right unless you have somebody that you think about constantly. It's a pattern of thinking that you're stuck in. Or maybe the thing that you're really stuck in is self-hate. You constantly put yourself down. You don't feel normal unless you're thinking terrible thoughts about yourself or saying terrible things to yourself. You don't even try to self-hate. It's just a pattern that's become a reflex for you. Or maybe you're stuck in gossip. Maybe you just love having the latest information on other people. Or you're really good at talking negatively about people. It's the way you talk, the way everyone around you talks. Now, this list could go on for a while, but let me summarize it this way. We don't always recognize our behavior patterns. When we do, we justify them with blaming or making excuses. And over time, these behaviors become our default. They feel completely normal. We don't even see them anymore. So what's the solution? Well, most of us think it's to just change our behavior, right? Just stop doing bad things. Just do what you're supposed to and avoid what you're supposed to avoid. In other words, try harder. That doesn't work. Maybe it does for a day or a week, but it doesn't change our behavior long term. And whether you're a Christian or not, we all do things we know we shouldn't do. We all have habits we wish we didn't. The question is, what do you do about them? Even if you don't care or don't want to change the habit now, what if you do in the future? How do you stop doing something you've been doing for a long time? Well, today, we're going to look at a passage that talks about habits in a different way than you might expect. The passage is from the book of Ephesians, which was a letter the Apostle Paul wrote to the church in Ephesus. And this is important to remember. The people receiving this letter are actual human beings in a church. In other words, you can relate to the people hearing this because that's what you are, a human being in a church. So in this letter, Paul says this: throw off your old sinful nature and your former way of life, which is corrupted by lust and deception. Paul is addressing the patterns of those in the church, much of which included their behavior. And because he's taking the time to write about it in his letter, we can assume that something needed to change. And looking at the verse we just read, it does sound like what we might expect, right? Just throw off the sinful nature. Get rid of it. Change. Be better. Do better. Only do good stuff. No bad stuff. But in the next verse, Paul takes the conversation in a different direction. He says this: instead, let the Spirit renew your thoughts and attitudes. According to Paul, the way to change your behavior is to let the Spirit lead you. And he's referring to the Spirit of God that's available to all of us at all times and in all places. But how does the Spirit of God help us throw off our old behaviors and actually change? By renewing our thoughts and attitudes. By changing us on the inside, he changes what we do on the outside. Changing behavior doesn't start with hating yourself or motivating yourself more or making more commitments. It starts in your mind. Stick with me for a moment. It's a silly example, but stick with me for a second. What's your favorite type of music to listen to? Let's say you love hip hop. You don't sit and think, I really want to set a goal to listen to more hip hop songs this year. Because you don't need to motivate yourself to change when it comes to something you really enjoy, like music. Your thoughts and attitudes do all the work for you. Now let's move to a behavioral pattern like cheating. Telling yourself the following does not work. I'm such a loser for cheating. That's sort of shaming yourself, and it's a terrible motivator to change. Or, I should stop cheating at some point. That's intention, but it never works long term. Or, I bet my mom, student leader, or small group leader, and teachers will be mad at me if they found out I cheated. Those are consequences, and they only work as motivation if you actually get caught cheating. So what would it look like to renew your thoughts and attitudes about cheating instead of shaming yourself or waiting for the consequences? Well, a good start would be in some internal dialogue like this. With God's help, I can control and decide whether or not I cheat. That's a change of thinking. And I would love to be the type of person who doesn't cheat, who's cool with being honest about what I know and what I don't. That's a change of attitude. Or, when I choose not to cheat and get a bad grade, I'll live with the outcome. God is bigger than a bad grade on a test or an assignment. Now that's a change of belief. See the difference? Now imagine if you brought God into the equation. God, I feel this natural pull toward cheating. Show me that I have a choice in this moment. Or God, help me love the fact that I'm going to approach this difficult test or assignment without doing something wrong. Or God, I trust you by not cheating on this test. And I trust you with whatever grade I get on it, good or bad. Now you have God involved in renewing your thoughts and attitudes. You've invited him into the process. And that's exactly what Paul was talking about. Think of it this way. Ask God to change your mind in the moment. When you're feeling tempted to lie about something and you know that your natural tendency is to justify it or make excuses or blame it on your circumstances, invite God into that very moment. Before you continue the pattern, pause and ask God to help you throw the pattern out of whack. Don't just ask Him to change your behavior in that moment. Ask Him to change your thinking and your attitude about the situation altogether and in the future. Deleting old thoughts and attitudes doesn't necessarily get you unstuck or happen right away. There needs to be something new, something renewed to fill that gap the old patterns took up. And doing that takes time. Here are 2 ideas to help you get started. First, look to the Bible. Did you know that you can Google search a list of verses on basically any pattern you're struggling with? Just type in something like, Bible verses on cheating. There are websites that'll help, like openbible.com, biblestudytools.com, or biblegateway.com. You can print out one of these lists or edit it down to just 3 to 5 verses that really speak to you. You may be sitting there thinking, will printing out a list of Bible verses really help me? Yes, they will. Just try it. Put these verses in a place you'll see them regularly, and you'll be amazed at how having a list of what's true in front of you will begin to change your mindset and attitude toward the things you struggle with. Maybe even try memorizing a verse or 2. And then second, you can get unstuck through conversations. Talk to someone you trust, a friend, your student pastor, a parent, or a small group leader. Look for someone who truly cares about what's best for you and your future. Someone who will love you as you try to get unstuck. Doing this is helpful in 2 ways. First of all, just getting it out in the open will help you feel better. I guarantee you. Second of all, hearing the perspective of someone you trust will give you the advice, guidance, and wisdom you'll need to help shape your thinking, attitudes, and beliefs about that struggle. As we wrap up this series, I want to leave you with this verse. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. It's true. God did not create us to live in fear. That's not from Him. He's actually given us some power, some control, some people around us who can help, some resources that will help us renew our minds and our attitudes. And most of all, He's given us access to Him. Ask God to change your mind in the moment. You may be surprised at how a change in your mind can get you unstuck from all the habits you wish you never had in the first place.